Eliminate the workplace excuse. That's what leaders do. This is the Career Blind Spot Podcast. What does a healthy executive ego look like, and why isn't it the norm?
Wow, we're jumping right in. That's a good question. Let me start with what ego looks like and then go to the counter.
Okay.
Because I define integrity differently. Because what I discovered is leaders are making decisions or interacting in a way that was being compromised. The outcome was compromised based on how they were coming to the table. Mm-hmm. So as a result of their ego. So ego to me looks in the form of, I call it my 5 by 5, the origination point by which something is compromised or uncompromised in terms of interaction or decision. So it's compromised when the ego is surfaced through defensiveness, arrogance, meaning just overconfidence in their competence, impatience, avoidance. And avoidance comes through as dismissiveness, discounting, invalidation, and then control. And control is, it doesn't get talked about a lot. Control is where they use their power to conceal something in protection of their image. So that's what ego looks like. So a healthy ego would be I call it the other 5, which is vulnerability counteracts defensiveness. Mm-hmm. Humility counteracts arrogance. It's the curiosity that, it's curiosity that counteracts impatience. Okay. It's the ability to ask a question and ask if this is the right way instead of assuming, or instead of needing something to go fast, thinking that that's going to get to the end result. Okay. And then confronting something to counteract avoidance. And then transparency is a healthy ego. And this is the common denominator that leads to massive change, which is the willingness to reveal, even if it means something is unfavorable about myself or someone that I'm close with, a colleague that I might be close with.
Why isn't that what I think most people would describe their executive leadership team? Are we being unfair, or clearly ego is an issue, but it's also, ego's not necessarily the problem. It's the negative side of it, as opposed to being transparent, being vulnerable, being curious. Why isn't the default, which really, as I ask you that, it's like, that's a really hard question one, but any thoughts there?
Why isn't so my 5 by 5 is the left side is the negative, the right side is the positive. Yeah. So are you saying, why isn't the default on the right side 5?
For executive leaders.
I believe that most leadership development focuses on the bright side of someone's personality. And it's always the side of empowerment, right? Empowerment to find your voice, empowerment to believe that you're not an imposter when you're in the position that you're in. And so we're always feeding the side that is, let's say, unsure or doubtful. Okay. We're never is a strong word. So we rarely focus on the other side of ourselves, which is the dark side of our personality, or what we do with power. We actually don't talk about power as what is, and power is more seen as negative, because when people get into a position of power, there is less accountability. So when there's less accountability and you have more control and authority to interact and make decisions how you want, we're not studying and we're not examining the decision points the decisions that leaders are making that are in the best interest of self versus their company or their business or their team. Yeah. So because I've been behind closed doors for much of my career, meaning as a consultant, as a coach, where I'm behind closed doors, everything I'm doing is highly confidential and sensitive. I've been able to watch and observe and participate and be part of the decisions that they're making that go against what they publicly are saying that they believe in, that they want to espouse, that they want to live in terms of their values, the mission, the strategic goals. Yeah. And these decisions, so going back to integrity, are compromised when they are self-protecting.
Yeah. The first thing that popped up as you're describing that is like, have you heard of shadow work? Like in therapy, like or like kinks,
Meaning like your
existential
shadow,
kinks, like your dark
shadow.
side,
Yes, yes.
I don't want to be too.
I love the dark side,
but there's we don't want to embrace that, and because it's scary, but also it is kind of what they say, what you want is on the other side of fear, sort of thing. Can I say something?
Yeah,
please.
You know what I was thinking? Is I think because we have emphasized the power of positive psychology and using positive psychology as a form of creating change.
Yeah.
And I bought into that as well.
Yeah.
Right. I'm thinking this is why we say remember something versus saying don't forget. Because if we say don't forget, then we'll forget versus if we say remember. Yeah. So it's the same thing in psychology. If we just focus on what motivates us and what inspires us, that's going to bring the best out in us. But if we don't do the other side of the coin, like you said, the dark side, we're actually negating these areas that don't get tackled when we only focus on the bright side of ourselves.
I'm gonna get not mad at you, but explain my anger in a second. But first, for those, we're doing this video, which is great, thanks to Tintilla Productions. But we have here, I have here on the Career Blind Spot podcast, Dr. Tiffany Brandreth, who is an organizational transformation consultant and coach in the leadership industry. And we met roughly not quite a year ago. And you were talking about power dynamics and false safe space and a variety of things that I can't wait to touch on, hopefully quite a bit, but probably not everything. So thanks for first of all, for coming all the way to Phoenix and a Waymo, which, this is not related at all, but just tell us about the Waymo real quick.
That was so cool. It's the first time. So I will remember today's the first time I used a Waymo. And I was able to unlock the car with my app, with the phone. There was no driver. And it was cool because it said, "Hi, Dr. Tiffany Brandreth. I'm getting ready to take you to X address." I get in. I didn't buckle my seatbelt right away. It told me to buckle my seatbelt. Not me, but right. It encouraged me to buckle my seatbelt. And it took me to the exact location. I was able to get out. It was waited there for a while and then it drove off.
Yeah.
It is the coolest new, transportation mode. Yeah, and I can't wait to use it more.
Yeah, and there's other ones, but we have them here and they're amazing. And I'm trying to get them to sponsor, so I'm glad you put that on there.
Absolutely, but it'll be interesting, right? Discomfort. It's a little bit of fear regarding, this going to, what if it shuts down? What if I get locked in? What if all these things?
There's definitely one of the features, I'm sure they're going to fix it, but anyone, but especially a woman or someone who is maybe more socially concerned about like being late at night, it unlocks all 4 doors. And if you were thought you were being followed, they need to be a feature of which one to go to versus.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm random. Smart. I like to bring it back. But
that's okay. Thanks for introducing me to the Waymo.
I love it, and
feature.
I love that you used it, and you also flew down here. But let's go back to use a great word, integrity. We say these. I like what you were saying about the values. Not just I agree, and I think it needs to be talked about more. It's one thing to have your mission, vision, and values, or your tattoo on your arm or your LinkedIn. It's another thing to walk in it and to be uncomfortable. And to me, I learned a couple years ago, I'd always know the word repent, but from not just biblically or spiritually, but I always thought it was like punishing yourself. Oh, you did bad. You had bad thoughts or whatever. But it's actually to course correct. And go back to the light or whatever your faith. And it's no, it's not that we mess up. That's not the problem. It's that we don't course correct. And to see leaders or people who have responsibility and authority, it really pisses me off when I see people who know better and don't do better. But also sometimes I know better and I don't do better. And rather than judge, I try to work on myself. But I heard you speak about power dynamics, and I'm going to read a quote that I think is great, and feel free to jump in and add. You had said, "Purpose did not protect leaders from their ego when their sense of stability was at risk." It's something you had discovered after 40-something workshops. Elaborate on that, because I think that's a banger.
Okay. This is after working with about 45 executive leadership teams. So let's say there's anywhere between 8 to 13, 15 individuals on an executive leadership team. And each of these teams were highly committed to change. It could have been highly committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, highly committed to aligning their culture to their values. and very committed to identifying the challenges and issues that employees were having that were causing disengagement, right? So the employee engagement scores being low.
Sure.
And inevitably, there would be a stopping point. Prematurely before they would have the progress that they really wanted to make. And so when I went back and started examining the stopping points and what was causing that, because it came to a point where it's actually frustrating for me and disheartening for me, because the individuals that would share their stories and would participate in the focus groups and the surveys and entrusting me with their truth and having hope, going from hopelessness to hope, because I was coming in and they would hear the things that I was talking about and the questions I was asking them. And then to have their faces and names on my conscious and having the leaders behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, even having the assessment regarding the challenges, but saying, this is all fixable. This can all be changed. And they would stop. I had to figure out why. And so this is when I discovered the truth is the greatest threat to a leader or leadership team's sense of purpose and wanting to create change and make a difference. And that truth would look in the form of maybe something about their leadership style, even including a colleague that they were super close to that they wanted to protect. Or it could be the company, right? They felt like it would place the company at risk based on what I was uncovering, because they never expected me to uncover what I would uncover, right? Or want me to. Right? But I think it was always a surprise, right? The level of depth that I would go, that I don't know that I would intentionally go there. It would just be brought out in the inquiry stage. And so when that truth would be silenced is when I realized that's when the status quo would remain, stagnation would happen, and then the goals wouldn't get achieved, innovation wouldn't happen, inclusion wouldn't happen, all the things they said that they would wanted to happen wouldn't happen. So, and that was a big thing for me, because I was somebody, and I'm sure you as well, Juan, in all of your work with leaders, we were taught that if you know your purpose, you're on your way to, it's your North Star. And so I helped hundreds of leaders identify their purpose. And thinking, now you're on your way, and now we're going to focus on A, B, C, and D. And then discovering that the purpose isn't enough in times when a leader is at a crossroads and they have a chance or a choice to go this way, serve the greater good, or self-protect. 90% of those leaders self-protected. So actually, let's drill down on that. And first of all, I think it's a little, maybe not negative, but I think helpful is your purpose isn't enough. Or other people say all you need is love. No, you need a lot more. You need. One of my friends from Virginia says you also need skills, especially from a relationship anyway. But you said that 90%, and I'll paraphrase here, feel free to clean it up, that, a lot of leaders who have purpose, they're committed, but they're failing. And then the 10% who are committed and succeeding, talk about that. What's the difference there? They are committed. So the 90% are committed, until it gets difficult. That's
that crossroads.
That crossroads. What the 10% are doing, and what I mentioned earlier, is what I realized is they are exhibiting the vulnerability or the humility, the curiosity, and the willingness to be transparent. So they will face the truth, even if it means that their image might be tarnished. In their mind, because the image has already been tarnished, their credibility has already been shaken, and so but in their mind, they're exposing themselves in a way that they hadn't planned, but willing to do that because they want the best for the business. They want the best for their team or for the individuals that they are wanting to, to impact. So it begins with those five, and they may start on the other side, like defensiveness or arrogance, and that's completely okay. That's a natural human instinct, right? That's fine. It's the ability to cross the bridge to the other side.
When I tell me I'm not an expert in the way you are, but I see it enough that I'm like, I understand what's going on. And especially when I'm coaching or facilitating a workshop, I'm like, look, I'm guilty of this too. You use our assessments, the DISC and motivators. And I tell people, I'm like, look, this is entrepreneurial profile. And everyone's like, yeah. It's like, also, El Chapo has this profile. Like, this doesn't tell us if you're a good or a bad person. Also doesn't tell us if you're able to be this person. And that often is why we are frustrated in the workplace. You want to be dominant and influential or whatever it is. And by the way, Dr. Tiffany is high DI or ID and a C.
IDC.
Yeah, so
adapted.
You have a very natural
and in the middle of the wheel.
Yeah. So you want to go fast, but also let's cross our T's and dot our I's. And you also use motivator, so that's why she's on. But or not also why, but why I'm really excited. It's not to say, it goes back to that repent or it's course correct for those who aren't into the spiritual. It's not like I like to talk. I'm a high I, you're a high. Sometimes I talk too much, but also when I'm depressed, I'm not talking enough or going out and socializing. And so I guess my statement that I don't think is wrong, but I'm curious how you would answer is people aren't inherently one or the other. There's not just people who are always going to have bad ego and always just people who have good. And just because you had a good Q1, your ego might go out of check because your sense of stability gets thrown off. Even the most healthiest ego is still susceptible to not protecting people at some time.
Absolutely, because we don't know what situation we're going to encounter that ends up being a threat to ourselves, right? We don't know when that threat is going to arise. Yeah. Everyone has a different threshold of that.
Yeah, and I don't know if we've said this phrase yet, but I'm just going to plop it in. False safe spaces. Is that how you said it before?
So this is, so remember the 4 purpose-driven leaders, the 4 purpose-driven archetypes of leaders that I identified or named in the keynote?
Oh, can you share that real quick for the listening?
So these are highly purpose-driven leaders committed to change. And I ended up, through my research of all those executive teams and leaders, 4 emerged. And through my grounded theory research. The first one is performative. So the performative leader is somebody who inspires through words, but fails in action. Okay. So they communicate in the way they inspire is through their purpose. However, we didn't get into this, but their principles are now allowing them to serve their values and their purpose. So they inspire through words, fail in action. Gotcha. The next leader is the highly judgmental leader. This is a leader who's highly principled in things like inclusion, like innovation, like the company values. However, their idealism prevents their idealism in terms of operating from a place of this is how something should be, this is how someone should be, leads them to be highly judgmental because their principles are overriding and it's an imbalance. So they have purpose, but it's never being communicated. It's not being exercised because their principles and their judgment is so high. So this type of leader I refer to as, I call this idealism is lost in criticism. Ooh. And then the dishonest harmony is the leader who is highly oppressive. So when we hear the term oppressive in terms of traditional leadership styles, we automatically think of a leader who's autocratic, highly dictatorship, right? Bold, brash, whatever outward personality traits that we may see right now. This purpose-driven leader who's oppressive is somebody who is very nice. Does not, people really enjoy talking with them. They're highly trusted. Their communication style is always framed in a way that is very nice and like I could be giving you really tough feedback, but you'd be able to receive it because it doesn't feel like tough feedback, right? It's that type of leader. However, harmony is their greatest sense of, I would say is their greatest need. So truth disrupts harmony.
Yeah.
Right? Because and truth about something that may reveal that they may see as criticism about themselves that they were involved in
Yeah.
and it didn't lead to something great or it wasn't something
Yeah.
perfect, that truth is seen as a threat to them. And so they will...
Toxic
Go ahead.
positivity. I think.
Perfect. Yeah. Toxic positivity, dishonest harmony, all these things. What is that saying? Uncomfortable truth over comfortable deception, right? Or did I say it wrong? I always get things wrong.
Yeah.
So it's comfortable deception over uncomfortable truths. That's where this leader lives in.
Yeah.
So, so on my scale of the 5 by 5, these leaders are highly avoidant. So they will deflect, they will dismiss, they will invalidate anything that goes against their security, safety, stability, in their leadership, in their reputation.
Yeah.
And I will say that this is masked for a really long time. This was a discovery in terms of a leadership archetype that was surprising to me when I was younger in my career.
Yeah. Yeah, I from my experience, I'm not saying it's a perfect fit, but I've seen so many, whether it's friends or clients who are that, and I don't mean it necessarily as manipulating, but it's like, hey, stop BSing this person. Like, you're not holding them accountable. Like, you're afraid that they're not going to like you, but the truth is you don't like the work that they're doing right now, but you're not calling that out, and that's your job. And so now you're doing more work, and really I think you're resentful, but it's on you because you haven't actually addressed the issue, which is your job. But I think, again, I don't think anyone's binary, good or bad, or great ego or bad ego. It's this seasonal thing.
These leaders, they don't like to be disliked.
Yes. And it's uncomfortable, but it's not uncomfortable. I'll tell this really fast. There's a story about a guy who walks up to a porch and there's like a guy in a rocking chair and a dog, and the dog's whining. And the guy's like, hey, is your dog okay? He's like, yeah, he's fine. And the dog keeps whining. He's like, hey, is your dog? He's like, yeah, he's fine. And he's like, your dog keeps whining. He goes, yeah, he's sitting on a nail. And he goes, why didn't he get up? He goes, it doesn't hurt bad enough. It's like, that's a lot of leaders. Like, I'm dealing with this person, but I'm not. And every time I've helped or talked someone through or had some situation where not only was not even just a toxic employee, but just someone failing to do the job we need them to do, it's a lot of stress. It's a lot of uncomfortableness on the manager's part. But then once it's done, it's like this huge relief. And one of the cases is like, hey, this thing we thought this person was really good at and we were afraid to let them go, we found out it only takes like a fraction of the time, and actually they were doing it wrong. And hell, I'll throw myself under the bus with this personal story. We've been in the house for about 10 years and we didn't want a pool, but we have a pool. And I paid for a green pool for about 5 years because I didn't want to learn how to take care of it. And we just inherited the pool guy. Well, and it was fine. It was fairly cheap for what I understood to take care of a pool. Well, one year things start breaking. And so we're paying for them to get fixed. And all of a sudden, a couple grand later, I'm like, but why is my pool not blue? Like, it's been green and it's getting better. And then one day they were like, well, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you know what? I got to fire you guys. I got to let you guys go. And then I'm mad at myself, really, the whole time. As much as I was mad at them, I'm like, why did I pay for a green pool? And the irony, and I'll shout out to my pool guy, Sparkling Blue Pools, solo business, Herman. He's actually from Germany. And I see his truck, don't know who he is. He costs almost double, but guess what? I've had a blue crystal clear pool 98% of the time. He's also saved me in equipment, and he's very clear in communicating, and I love his service. But in that transition, I realized I should only be mad at myself, not that other company. I never raised my expectation that I wanted a pool. I just hoped that paying this rate was going to get it. And then I paid another $500 here and $1,500 there. And I'm mad at myself for not getting the blue pool, but I needed to lead with that. And when I didn't get it, I needed to course correct. So I see a lot of people complaining like, hey, this person should be making the pool blue. It's like, no, they've always had it green. And not to say you can't get there, but at some point, it's not on you to do, to make that. It wasn't up to me to train the old pool company. It was to say, my pool should be clear and blah, blah, blah. And everyone, I'm talking too much about my pool now. told me I had to spend like a whole bunch of money because we're in an older house, and I didn't. And even people I trusted and were credible, and I don't think they were trying to screw me. This man Herman, and he's maintained it. We've had to but I'm also like glad that he's preventative maintenance. And it's like, that's what, the whole phrase, you get what you pay for. Well, but you also need to know the standard of like, what do you expect out of giving someone this money? So I have bunny trailed this quite a bit.
That's okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so.
Something that I forgot to mention in the 3 archetypes where I talked about performative, oppressive, and judgmental is that the performative leader loses credibility when they once had super high trust.
Yeah.
And with the individuals that they lost credibility with, they never regained that credibility.
Yeah.
To me, that's really huge. And then the judgmental leader, purpose-driven leader, I like to say purpose-driven leader who is judgmental, leads with judgmental, they lose their ability to influence change because of that judgment. And then the purpose-driven leader who ends up being oppressive, that's where the safety is gone because people know not to speak the truth.
Yes.
They know not to speak the truth.
They'll give the employees survey or whatever, but it's like, no,
nothing's going to be done with this.
Yeah.
And I don't want to speak the truth anyway. You know how employees are. Sometimes they don't even want to take the DISC assessment. They're afraid that that's going to, be used against them.
Yeah.
So, the purpose-driven leader who is oppressive ends up losing psychological safety with the group, and because they silence the truth. So then we should definitely talk about the last one, the transformative leader.
Yeah.
The transformative leader, which is the 10% of leaders, 1 out of 10 leaders are transformative because they are willing to be transparent with the truth and willing to reveal what is true for them. And I say truth, so I always get some type of skepticism regarding, is it really truth? Somebody's calling it truth, but is it really truth?
Yeah.
I said, it's truth in turn. It is truth because they are revealing what is true for them.
Yeah.
That's the key. And so the leaders that are willing to seek that out, to pursue the truth, because they know it'll serve something greater and it'll serve as a breakthrough for something innovative, something different, something, cutting edge, or even for inclusion. Mm-hmm. These are the leaders that are creating change. And I call this the ripple effect of impact.
Yeah.
These are the leaders that are doing that.
Yeah, no, I love it. In the last 10 or so minutes, I actually kind of want to put some things together for the audience, for those who are listening. You have a program, Transform Your Senior Leadership Team, which will be a link in the show notes that you can check out. But let's go back to something you did say earlier, and building on what we're also talking about now, about the confidentiality. This is a lot of the work you're doing or not all the work you're doing is not this public display. So it's behind closed doors. There's a lot of trust, vulnerability, et cetera. I asked you in the pre-questions about recent blind spots where people often feel that others have to do the work. They should do the workshop and blah, blah. I'm good. So almost not a trick question, but this all sounds wonderful. It's great. But I could see the people who are on the other side of the 5 with the ego, that not the leader, especially leaders, like, I don't need to do this. Why would someone want to do this? And I would imagine the ripple effect of like, look, if you're going to take the medicine, then more likely other people are, especially when you're authority. And also, if you don't, what kind of message are you sending to the rest? But, this is not easy stuff. This is when someone is, or why would someone want to do this workshop specifically, the Transform Your Senior Leadership Team, or like you say, when people do come to you, like what's the breaking point or turning point that they're like, let's try something different? Or because I would imagine it's not just a DISC workshop, that's part of it, but it is, they are really leaning into checking their ego. They're really like, what's the catalyst behind that for leaders?
Gosh, that's a really good question.
It's a really long question too. So feel free to pick up anywhere there.
the first thing that comes to mind is this is the first time. So I just rebranded my website. I started my company back in 2013. And so what is this, 15 years later now? So I've never advertised or communicated that I work specifically with senior leadership teams. And because the work is so confidential and private and sensitive. And so you don't see me on social media. It's funny because as we're submitting applications to be a keynote speaker somewhere and share this transformation formula, the question that is always being asked is, what's your Instagram handle and your Facebook and your numbers? I'm like, 20 people, 200 people maybe. And my LinkedIn is really low because I was always so fearful if I even post a quote, if I post something, it will always connect back to the individuals that I'm working with, or they'll perceive it that I'm speaking about them. And that's a fragile place in terms of when we talk about egos. If they even think that what I'm speaking about or sharing some positive quote or some advisement or education, if they perceive it that I'm talking about them, I've lost them. Right? Because now I'm using their vulnerability against them. And then certainly in the day that we're in now, everything requires photos and proof that you're doing it. And to say, hey, can we take a photo at the end of a session that's been very, right? We're going deep. We go deep fast, like the way you started this podcast. It was how we go in deep. So we don't take photos, right? We really honor that space. So I just want to say I've only just I only just started communicating that this is the work that I do. So I'm really excited to see the response in terms of more individuals. I've been referral based only. So this is what I've discovered in terms of when someone reaches out to me. Sometimes they weren't expecting to hear what I was saying in a talk, in a conference workshop, or in a meeting. And they heard something that they hadn't heard before regarding change, regarding, I don't know, something around, the company values and not aligning. So I think they just hear something differently. And because they heard something differently, they said, hey, I think I need to have a conversation with you. What do you do? And so then when I talk about power dynamics, affecting decision dynamics, and then I call it micro behavior. Well, I don't call this, the world calls it micro. There's the micro behaviors in our interactions. Those always get swept under the rug in any leadership team because it's seen as, oh, don't be overly sensitive. But these micro behaviors are causing the unhealthy place of a team and a company. So I go in and I really examine the interactions and the behavior dynamics and then work. And so I think because I talk about that, they're like, oh, maybe we have some power dynamics that's impacting our ability to be here. Even if they're doing really great here, they could be here by removing all of these, the complexity of power. I think
that's great.
I don't know if I answered that.
No, it's because
I think people stumble upon. I think I have to say, I think they stumble upon me somehow.
Have you ever heard of certified B Corps?
Yes.
So I'm going to give a rough definition for those who haven't, and then feel free to tweak. But basically, it's companies that say, hey, we want to be better. We want to make sure we have diversity, equity, inclusion. We kind of hadn't said that just yet, but we want to actually do it. And to me, it's almost like you're asking the IRS to audit you to be better at your finances. Like, why would you do that? I get, but you're just going through the gamut as an organization, and you're basically looking for, you're not doing this well, you're not doing this well, this is okay, this is good, and then you can do something about it. And it's kind of like never done. So maybe that's I've interviewed a couple CEOs who have done it, and I'm like, that's awesome, but like, why'd you do that to yourself?
It's so awesome. And there's some companies that I'm working with where I would put them in the performative category because they're B Corp certified and they have all the right plans, they have all the right stuff. And then once they got certified.
Yeah.
Stopped the
Yeah.
work and didn't continue.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like I immediately when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, my wife gave me, my partner Courtney, before my son was born, a mug that said best #1 dad or whatever. And I'm like, I've not earned this yet. but at the same time, I'm like, I love drinking from him. He's 2 now. And but at the same time, I'm like, oh, you know what? Sometimes I am like resting on last year's win or last week's win. And again, it's one thing for me to do something as an individual, but it's another thing to run a whole company. You know,
It's a lot.
It's like, here's a weird one too, of like people always criticize politicians and executives. And I think deservedly, that's comes with the territory, but it's almost like saying, you know, like Hollywood actors like deserve the paparazzi stuff. Like it's not really why someone liked to do theater, but also don't be that surprised, you know, and just because it is that way doesn't mean it should be that way. But my point of, I kind of get you, and you said earlier, like you keep saying purpose driven. Not everyone, I think, wants to make the workplace better. And it does count when you do say you want to, but it almost is like worse when you say you want to and then you don't. And I'd almost say like, don't say you want to, just be this company that makes burgers or be whatever. And I almost have, or not almost, I have more respect for people who are more clear on this is what we do. But when you say, and I'm going to support you or at least be interested, hey, we treat our people better, our customers, but then you don't live up to it. Like the crime is not that you fall short. It's that you keep saying we're a 5-star service, but we're only going to be 4 stars today. Like, no, just say you're 4 stars. Like,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So no,
I just have to say yes, 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 yes. You said so much. I love to advise leaders that you don't have to have this value on your company values. Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Like, you don't have to have this on your company values if you really don't truly want to live this. And I say, this is what it means to have this value. Are you ready to have this value on here? Because you will be calibrated and measured against this, against whether or not you're living this. So yeah, I think employees would have so much more respect for their leadership teams if the leaders believe that they could just be honest around, you know what, this is our truth. Yeah. This is what we want. This is what we're going to live. And you don't have to be performative. You don't have to have these things. And they would be, the employees would respect the leadership team so much more if they did that.
And it's, like I said, I'm a business owner. I have my taxes. I do all that stuff. But it's different than like being a restaurant owner, brick and mortar, and having employees or whatever. So I'm saying like, it's easy to point our fingers, and I'm not saying don't do it, but when like, it's like, why are you putting that pressure on yourself? If you want to do it, fantastic. But if you're not enjoying doing it, don't advertise that you're doing it. And then you're getting stressed at all the people mad that you're not doing it as well as you say you could do. Like this problem is you're the one with the authority and the power. So either live up to your own expectations or change them.
I don't think that they know though. Right? Meaning, I don't think, so one, I love it when leaders want to strive for greatness. Yeah. I love that. I love it when they want to strive for excellence. And I never want to, douse that out.
Sure.
So the ones who do want greatness and have these aspirations to go from here to here with themselves, their values, all of that, then those are actually the ones that I love to work with, because if that that internal fire is there, you can reach them.
Yeah.
And it's more around just educating when is it going to be tough for you?
Yeah.
I call it the death zone. So I use this for DEI. I use this for culture change. The death zone, I use the Mount Everest analogy. So what I like to do is discover from the beginning, what is the death zone of change for them? When will that moment be?
Ooh, that's a great place to go another probably 45 minutes. But I think that is a great place to end that death zone. That's not just a rhetorical question. If you're listening or you want someone else that you're working with, I think that's when are you going to maybe wobble on your values? Maybe when are you going to need support, vulnerability, a safe space, whatever you need to call it? And I think as a leader, I just said this somewhere else or a different podcast, that leadership shouldn't be lonely, but I also understand why it is, because you can't necessarily be vulnerable and open with all of the staff. But I think other than hitting the metrics that you were assigned, the real KPI or key accountability of being a leader is finding that group of people where you can be vulnerable so that you can make the right decisions and discern when there is no clear right or wrong, but there's a standard that you're going to live up to. If you have not cultivated a group of people that you trust, then you're doing leadership wrong and you need some help, which is, I think a lot of us weren't shown the right way to do leadership. We see a lot of executives, people in power, and that's one way to do things. But I think modernly, like, we don't have to be these tyrants, these bullies. And I think a lot of us don't want to be, but unless you have an alternative, you don't know what to do. And you get stuck in this, I'm going to say I'm going to be this person, but then behind the door, I'm going to be performative or controlling, et cetera. Like I said, we could probably keep going, but any last words to share with the group?
Okay.
The audience.
The Death Zone.
Yeah.
What's really beautiful about this is that in order to reach the summit of Mount Everest, you actually have to go through the Death Zone, and it's right before the summit that it's there.
Yeah.
I won't go into the science behind all this. So leaders, when they reach the Death Zone or they encounter it or experience it, rather than thinking that they're failing or that it's too hard, they reach a point right before that greatness is going to be achieved or that summit is going to be reached. So oh God, I had something I wanted to say regarding the tools or the research that I identified I'm not saying.
That's okay. No, yeah. You were talking about death zones and Mount Everest.
So the work that I do with them is having all the tools and the right equipment to be able to navigate and get through. So there's one last thing I want to say regarding, because you were talking about leaders and and the level that they're at and the responsibility, the weight that they carry. Yeah. I was just saying this at a conference that I was speaking at. What I've come to realize is that leaders will be most criticized for the decisions that they make. And they will be most praised for the humanity that they exhibit. And the more empathy that they are able to show, they will be more appreciated versus the decisions that they make that have an impact on individuals is where they get that disapproval. However, leaders can't lead based on whether or not they're going to receive criticism or praise, because the higher up they go, the broader responsibility that they have. So their decisions are based on the collective, not on the individual. And so the way they approach their decision-making and who they bring along in their decision-making will help minimize that impact so that they come to the table without being compromised in the way they're making their decisions.
That's good.
That's what I'll leave you with.
That is a great holding spot. We'll have to have you again. Thank you for making the trip, for taking Waymo, and for dropping. I feel like this is blunt, but also very kind and but impactful. And I don't think everyone's ready for it. I think everyone eventually is going to want to do it. But like you said, they kind of find you. But you have to start looking for it. And I know not whether it's DEI or disc workshops, not everything moves the needle. And just hearing you speak and connecting with you more. And I don't think I said this, or maybe I did, but Dr. Tiffany does use the DISC and the motivators assessments.
It is my go-to.
Yeah.
Out of all the assessments that I'm certified in and trained in, DISC is my go-to for conflict, for team building, for anything related to culture.
Yeah. So I want to support the people who are doing the work, and you're already facilitating. I think everyone inherently does want to be a better person or a better leader or better whatever, but don't always have the right circumstances and tools. And so anyway, you are very impactful, and I really encourage you guys to check out the show notes for the link. And especially if you're an executive team, you do work with a lot of law firms and other organizations. We won't say which ones.
I worked across 25 different industries, small businesses, nonprofit, family-owned corporations, privately held global corporations in Fortune 500 and Global 10.
Yeah. And so I think of, like, when it comes to this, I don't want to diss nonprofits, but there's this, oh yeah, everyone wants to be nice, and I'm like, they got their problems too. And
I love working with nonprofits.
But that's my.
Yes.
But like when there's lawyers or power dynamics, I just keep saying that.
It's
like,
everywhere.
When you know that there's an imbalance or something, whether you're the person or someone else, I think like it. Not everyone is equipped to help facilitate that. I think people want to, but to actually do it is a whole other story.
I just had this thought. You know how the Super Bowl is coming up, right? And every football team has a coaching staff. They have the head coach, offensive coach, defensive coach, whatever they call them, right? And the quarterback leads the team on. Okay, let me stop that. So let me just say, every single football team has a coaching staff.
Yeah.
And there's no question, that's never disputed, that team and that quarterback should have a coach to coach them through the entire game and do the play calls and all of that. I believe organizations, in terms of an executive team, every single organization, every single executive team needs their coaching staff to help them, right, through their games, through their weather, through the storms, through, to be able to win at the end of the year, win, quarter to quarter. So, but what's interesting is they don't always see themselves as needing a coach, or they can fire their coach when they don't want to do the work that they need. But I view organizations and football teams very similar.
Oh yeah, no. Any group of people that has a mission and money's involved, power dynamics are really going to matter. Thank you for coming.
Thanks
this has
so
been
much,
great.
Juan. This is so fun.
Awesome. I make this show for leaders, those who don't point fingers, but point towards ways they can do better at work. My ask for listening is you share the show on social and or with other leaders, established or aspiring. Until then, no talent, no culture, no excuses.